Photoshop is a very complex tool, and we could spend multiple semesters just learning about it. But since it's just one of the software tools we have to learn in visual fundamentals, I want to get to the nitty gritty of it. You've already seen some of the filters and how to manipulate color in Adobe Camera Raw. Now I want to look at the tool palette in Photoshop and learn some of the basic tools. So let's take a look. First, we want to open up our photo. So I go looking for that photo. Remember, we saved a web version. We want to work with the best quality version of the photo. So not the 640 by 480 web version, but the full quality version. Mine's 960 by 1280. That's the one we want. So I right click on that and say open with Photoshop. And then let me just get rid of that window behind us there. Move this up. Okay, so there it is. By default, the magnifying glass tool, which is this tool, is there, which, as you would expect, it's got a little plus sign on it. If you click on the photo anywhere with this magnifying glass tool, it will enlarge it. And do that a couple of times so it's nice and large. And then we're just going to look at these tools over here. This is the tool palette. So to begin with, one thing I always do when I create anything in Photoshop, I try to save the background layer as it is. I double clicked on it, which makes it editable, but I'm really not going to be doing much editing with it. I'm going to instead come down here to layer 0, which is the background layer, right click on that and duplicate it. Say OK, and now we have right on top of it an exact copy. The first tool up here is the move tool, and whatever layer we're on here is the layer that we are working on. So I'm on layer 0 copy, and with the move tool, if I just go anywhere on it, click and drag, I'm moving it. So as you can see, it's a duplicate of the layer behind it because you can see the layer behind it as we move it around. So I just move it over to the right. Now, I don't actually want to do that, so I can undo that by going to Edit, Undo Move. Or the shortcut key for that is the Apple Z key, or it can be, in this case, it would, if I undid it again, it would actually redo it. Or you can step backwards, which is your Option Apple Z key. So then under each of these tools, if you click on them, see there's this little arrow down in the lower right hand corner. If you click on that and hold it, you'll see that there's sometimes different versions of the tool or related tools under it. In general, we're going to just be looking at the top level tool, but there are some related tools. In this case, under the move tool is the Artboard tool, which allows you to create versions of an image. It's a fairly new feature in Photoshop. It's only been in Photoshop since 2015. People are using Artboard tools a lot to create different versions of one image. So if I was creating an image for the web and for a mobile device and for a game console, I might use artboards to do different versions of the same image. But it's a little more advanced than we want to deal with right now. So all you really need to know for this class is about the move tool. So let's move on to the one next to it. Whenever you do anything to an image in Photoshop, you have to select the part of the image that you want to do something with. So there are a number of selection tools. One is the rectangular marquee tool. So with it, it allows us to click and drag and create a rectangle. If I click down here and drag, I create a rectangle. However, I create this rectangle, then that allows me to select all the pixels inside that rectangle, highlighted by these what we call marching ants, this dashed line that moves around. That means all of those pixels in that area can be manipulated. We can do things with them. We can, if we click in here and drag, we can actually move the rectangle wherever we want. Say we only want to do this corner, we can do that. Or we just want to select this corner or the bottom corner. So that's the rectangular marquee tool. The elliptical marquee tool does the same thing, except it selects an oval. So it's a quick way to select something like this. I just want to grab my face here and do something with it. With either the elliptical tool or the rectangle tool, if you hold the shift key while you select, it creates a perfect let me step backward here to get rid of what we've done. With the elliptical tool, if you hold the shift key while you make a selection, it selects a perfect circle. If with the rectangle tool, you hold the shift key, you get a perfect square. There are two other things here, the single row marquee tool and the single column marquee tool. Single row marquee tool allows you to select just one row of pixels. It looks like a line, but if we zoom way in, we'll see that in fact it's selecting one row of pixels. The column marquee tool, of course, selects one row of one column of pixels going up and down. So if we go to the magnifying glass and we hold the Alt key down, it puts a little minus in the magnifying glass, and we can, if we click with our mouse, we're zooming out. And as you can see, there's that line of pixels from top to bottom all selected. So go to select and deselect them. Another way you can select pixels to manipulate is with lassos. So the basic lasso tool allows you to just by freehand grab your mouse or whatever tool you're using and just select an area or a region in the image by freehanding it. Now, of course, if you were to be doing some very detailed work, you'd be a lot more careful than I'm being for this quick video. The Polygonal Lasso tool allows you to select, it selects automatically a polygonal shape. So basically, if I click here, say, click up here, makes a straight line. I can click over to here, click down here, and click all the way over here. You'll see that when it touches the first starting pixel, a little circle appears to the bottom right of the cursor there. That basically tells you that that is a complete selection, a complete circle. You've come all the way around. So I deselect that, or I click that, and now I've selected all of this area over here with the Polygonal Lasso tool. And then there's the Magnetic Lasso tool. It's another way to grab stuff quickly. So I click somewhere and it uses artificial intelligence to sort of grab what it thinks you want. So if I go around in a circle here on this Post-it note, it grabs roughly the Post-it note. It's going to stick that line to a place that it thinks you want to select because the pixels in that area are slightly different. So it doesn't matter if I'm holding this all the way out here or over here, because it's shadow there's some variability, but it's going to try to stick as near as it can to the hard edges. All right, that's the lasso tools. Then another way to select with artificial intelligence, or letting the program decide for you what to pick, is the quick selection tool. Quick selection tool basically grabs things, pixels in an area you decide, you click on. You can control the size of this cursor area, and then it picks pixels that are similar to it and selects them. So depending on what you have your settings on here, that can be a lot of pixels or a little bit of pixels. So if I were to deselect everything here and then just click inside this post-it note, it would automatically select all of the colors of pixels that were similar to that, so the whole post-it note. It's a quick way, rather than have to draw your way around that with the magnetic lasso tool or the polygonal lasso tool. One click of this and you get the whole thing. The magic wand is similar, and basically rather than scrub an area, you just click somewhere in an area and it selects everything in that area it thinks you want. So I have the tolerance set very high up here at 88, which means it's going to take a lot of pixels that are very similar to that. If the tolerance were just set to 8 instead of 88, it would be much more restrained in what kind of pixels it thought you wanted. Again, these are brute force tools used to grab stuff quickly, not necessarily as accurate as you might want them to be. But they're good ways of selecting large parts of the image very fast. All right, then we have the crop tool, which is pretty self-explanatory. I think we've already talked about the crop tool and you should be familiar with it. It's trying to crop this selection here because that was selected. So let me undo that. And I'm just going to go up here and deselect everything. Okay, if you don't have a specific part of the image already selected, the crop tool will default to the whole image. So as we've seen, you can move these handles to select exactly what part of the image you want to crop. Again, if you hold the Shift key, much like the marquee tools, the crop tool is going to it's going to lock that aspect ratio of length and height. So width and height. So if I hit Shift and drag this corner, doesn't matter where I put this cursor, it's going to try to hold to that aspect ratio. Unless I go way up here on the right hand side, then it assumes I want to rotate that same aspect ratio. But so I could crop it all over here. I could even then, move the image underneath it, to get exactly what I wanted. And then we would go to image crop to crop it to just that. Again, don't want to do that, so let me undo that. There's some other more specific crop tools, perspective crop tool and slice tools. Again, more advanced features than we need to worry about for the purposes of this class. Okay, then this is the Eyedropper tool. The Eyedropper tool basically allows you to select what color you're going to be working with in your color swatches down here. These two swatches are your foreground color and your background color. So whenever you color or do anything on here, it's going to color with whatever your foreground color is here. So by using this eyedropper tool, I can choose what color I want to work with. So if I wanted to work with the red of this book part here, I find a little part of it, put the eyedropper tool on it, and sample just the pixel that's right there, and that would be the basis of all my color. It's selecting the color of just one pixel, and you can see there it is. It's this uh, pale reddish color. So the circle that appears there is telling you what color you're selecting. Now, if that's not a maybe that's not as dark a red as I want, so I want to come over to this book and select a pixel. So I'll go over here and I'll find a part of this book here and click on it, and it's a darker red. As you can see, the upper part of that circle is darker than the lower part of that circle inside ring there. That's because the lower part is what you had selected before, and it's telling you this is going, the upper color, that's the new color you're going to be switching to. So as you can see, that's a darker red. So the color swatch has turned darker here. Next, there is the healing tool, spot healing tool. Spot healing tool is a quick way to just try to, again, use the artificial intelligence of Photoshop to adjust some pixels. I've got this selection area, and maybe I don't like the shadow my glasses are making here. So I will click on that and drag this around so that's covering generally the area. And when I let go, it uses the nearest neighbor pixels to decide what should be there, thus erasing the shadow. That was before, and that was after. Another way of doing this is the healing brush tool. So in order to do this, you have to option click and define a source point to be used to repair it thinks is the damaged area. So, if I think that that's not great, I could click up here on my forehead, choose these target color pixels to replace those pixels. So I click here, and then come down here and like drag this over them, and then let go, and suddenly it's healed this area. That's after, that's before. After, before. So it's a good way to get rid of some artifacts, clean up an image in a way you might not have considered before. There's also the patch tool, which allows you to select a patch area to heal, and you can just drag that around, and it's taking from the background to cover it up. So if maybe there's a zit or something you wanted to cover up, a blemish, you could select a really tight little circle around it with the patch tool, drag to the right, and it would choose the skin just to the right or the left of that area to heal it, to cover it over. It's kind of like concealer in a makeup kit. There's also a red eye tool to get rid of red eye. There isn't, red eye is that effect when a flash reflects in somebody's retinas and makes them look red. This particular image doesn't have red eye, so I can't demonstrate it for you, but basically you would drag it over the eye and it would heal that red eye problem. All right, the paintbrush tool. Really simple. This takes whatever color you're working with down here, and you can even click on your swatch here and change the color. And it allows you to paint with that color right onto your image. So I could, grab this here and start to paint right onto the image some color. And if I were to go down here, I could either select a different color. I could flip these two and choose to start working with blue instead and do a little blue here. And then I would have painted right on the image. This is useful if you want to do something like some, you know, choose the opacity of the layer that we just worked on here. You've got this layer selected. Reduce the opacity of it so that you can see through from below. And we got some really quick face paint on there or something. And then if we skip down here to the eraser tool, we can actually erase pixels from the upper layer. So say I want to still see my eye, I could erase, parts of this front image. And what I'm doing is I'm literally erasing pixels. So you can see this is the front image. I've reduced the opacity so it's transparent, but I'm cutting some pixels out of it entirely. I can cut out the stuff that's covering my mouth. And then if we look at, we're seeing through the background layer. It is one way to quickly delete stuff you don't want on your top layer. Under the paintbrush tool, there's also a pencil tool. This is like a paintbrush, but instead of a paintbrush, it's got a hard edge like a pencil. So, and you can make it a lot smaller too. Adjust the size, and you can write and draw right on your image. Below that, we have the clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool allows you to choose pixels from somewhere by using your Option key and clicking on your image, and then moving the cursor, let go of the Option key, move the cursor, and then click, and it's going to copy whatever's there and clone it to wherever you're clicking. So you could expand the number of books you have on a bookshelf this way. I'm just cloning what's on the right and cloning it to the left. Again, I'm showing you a quick and dirty version. If you were to really get good with Photoshop, you could go in here and make it look really professional rather than this really sloppy job of recopying and recopying that I've done. Similar to the clone stamp tool, there's a pattern stamp tool. Again, a more advanced feature where you're copying a pattern. I'm not going to get into that right now. I've already shown you we're skipping over the history brush tool. I've shown you the eraser tool. And then there's the paint bucket tool. The paint bucket tool basically slops paint straight onto your canvas. So again, you select an area, and then if you clicked on your paint bucket tool, it's going to drop whatever your foreground color is, which in this case is blue, right into that area and fill it with blue pixels. The blur tool allows you to blur part of an image. So say we wanted to select, let's go back up here, grab our rectangle marquee tool, select part of the image here that we wanted to blur, click our blur tool, and then just wipe that over top of that. And as you can see, we have blurred part of the image. There's also a sharpen tool, which does exactly the opposite. It sharpens part of an image, and a smudge tool, which smudges part of the image. So to sharpen part of an image, select the part that you wanted to sharpen, grab the sharpen tool, And let's make it bigger so that you can see it a lot better. I just rubbed that over that, and suddenly we've really sharpened up that image in that area. There's also the smudge tool that just smears it around. Grab the smudge tool, make it really big so you can see what I'm doing. And as you can see, I'm smearing the image around. The dodge, the next tool here is the dodge tool. The dodge tool, dodging and burning, is something that's a holdover from the days of actual dark rooms where you could overexpose or underexpose part of an image to create, to lighten them or darken them. We still call it dodging and burning, even though, it's all done digitally now. So if you were to take the dodge tool, you could lighten up parts of an image, and the burn tool, you could darken up parts of an image. The next tool is the pen tool. The pen tool, the path selection tool, the rectangle and ellipse tools, and the hand tool. These are things that are basically copied from Adobe Illustrator. They're the primary tools of Adobe Illustrator, and Photoshop imitates them. But we'll be talking about those more when we get to Adobe Illustrator, so I'm going to skip them for now. One thing I will look at, however, is the text tool. The text tool, as you might expect, allows you to create text on the image, and the text is going to default to whatever your foreground color is here. So I could just click in there and then type in whatever I wanted to do, my name, and then as soon as you've got it there, you'll see that a mini move tool appears if you move your cursor anywhere off of the text itself. That allows you to drag that to wherever you want it on the image. Maybe up here in this black area, whatever. And there you've got text. Text appears on its own layer over here. So I can, by clicking on this little eyeball, I can see it there or disappear. That's the text tool. Of course, there's tons more to learn about all of these different tools, and there's more advanced options under each of these things. The magnifying glass tool we already talked about. Allows you to zoom in. If you hold the Alt key, it turns to a minus. It allows you to zoom out. So those are basically all the tools there. A couple things to look at real quick down here. You can quickly toggle these two or switch these two palettes from whatever colors they are to black and white by clicking on the little black and white swatch here. You can flip them by clicking this arrow, which switches the background color to the foreground or the foreground to the background. And then the last thing I want to show you is down here. You have a way of looking at different screen modes. So by default, we have a Adobe Photoshop in its own window here. But if I choose, I can make it full screen mode, in which case it automatically zooms your palette, your window to the whole screen. Or I can look at there's sometimes when you just want to see the image and you can click on the full screen mode. It pops up a dialog box that tells you in full screen mode all of the panels are hidden. So all your tool palette here, all these adjustment panels, your layers they'll disappear. But by you can access them with the tab button, or you can use F or escape to go back to seeing this. So you click full screen, and there you have the image full screen. escape takes you right back to what we had before. So that's basically it. That's my introduction to the tools. You'll learn a lot more about them by reading the chapters this week and basically playing with them. So go in there and play around with all the tools to get more confident with what they do.